Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we are now going to go into the newly FOIA released Israeli documents that have, I guess, been out there for a week, but I was not able to get my hands on the source material until recently and give it a look. And I got to be honest with you, some of it is a little bit underwhelming, but good nonetheless. I would have really liked to see what the FOIA request actually said, just the whole thing. And I know that some people seem to have it in their possession. I hope they upload it. I'm a big fan of the full source material. So going over, what we have here, we basically have some good work being done in the alternative media trying to link up these pictures with already previous released documentation. And by the way, I got to tell you, I was out of the game a little while. I had no idea that in 2015 there was a large dump of the FBI reports. And although we're not going to be going over those today, they're in 5 different parts. Although there's a lot of repetitive stuff in there and a lot of things that are blacked out. Just the first part alone is 141 pages. So I'd be doing myself an extreme disservice not to make that a completely separate video. Today we are going to focus on the FOIA request and what it did and did not show us. Now, on top of that, in this deep dive, this one's going to be a long one, folks, so buckle up, okay? I promise. This one is going to be a long one. We're going to show my entire Israeli section from Fabled Enemies piece by piece so we can make some other connections. And then we're going to get into a guy named Josh Harris, who is this internet entrepreneur from the early days of the web, the early 90s, in fact, that then made a documentary film. I don't want to spoil everything, but that documentary film was called We Live in Public. And I actually was a big fan of it. I thought it was an excellent documentary, and I talked about it in my InfoWars days. And there's a connection there to some disinfo in the 9/11 truth movement that I think is important. And then there's also a connection later in Josh's life to these Israelis in a very real fashion. So, like I said, let's buckle up and get ready. So, when you look at this document, let's go over some of the things that are not in it. Out of the gates, it tells you that, hey, if there's anything that's classified, no dice. And that's whether or not it's national security, foreign intelligence records. We can just say that, we cannot confirm or deny, and this does not say that the records do or do not exist. And you see that several times, okay? And if you scroll down to here, and again, I really would have loved to be able to get my hands on the actual request, because I'm sure it was thorough. I mean, he did get some responses, and I would have also liked to see, just for the count and the URLs, basically they have file lines. They're not really URLs because they're not on the internet, but it tells you where they are. And there's a couple of things that are blacked out in them as well. So that's very odd. This seems to be part of the quote-unquote Pent bomb investigation of the FBI. So it says that the FBI can neither confirm nor deny the existence of records which could reasonably be expected to endanger the life or physical safety of an incarcerated individual. So I'm wondering if perhaps one of the questions that he asked, because again, they say the records may not or do exist, don't exist, we don't know. Don't think that makes this a standard response. So you have to read into it as well. But would that mean that maybe he asked for documentation on people that are serving criminal time at this point? I mean, that's a possibility. And then, again, he did get a lot of stuff. So let's look at the pictures, okay? And, I read through all of that. I'm going to focus on the guy with the overalls here really quick, because he's very, very easy to find in the initial police report. Now, the police report, I'm not sure if that was available. Where are we? Sorry about that, guys. I'm not sure that was available for the FBI dump in 2015. But I can say that Patrick Henningsen, I believe, his publication, 21st Century Newswire. Man, everything gets archived these days. It's just so sad. In 2015, when these big FBI documents, he did a huge piece. Okay. Urban moving systems, huge timeline. Look, I'm still scrolling. These guys, you're going to see these guys in my documentary when we get to that section of this video. So, again, thorough job. I will not only be reading that, but I'm going to be reading those documents, and then we can get into a deep dive of that as well, guys. So I want to point out that when these guys were detained, and these are absolutely the people that are in the pictures, okay, and we're going to go over some of those pictures in a moment, that they had to physically take them out, okay? Let's see. The return transmission revealed the plate on the van matched the broadcast, so at this time I returned to the driver door and requested the driver to stop the vehicle and exit. The driver did not immediately exit the vehicle, and he was asked several more times, but he appeared to be fumbling with a black leather fanny pouch type of bag. This officer then physically removed him, so the person making the report. Sergeant Ravelli removed the passenger and one other passenger from the passenger side of the van with minor assistance from officer in training, T and Cone, and other 2 occupants were removed, placed on the grass, off the shoulder, and this officer read all 5 individuals their Miranda rights. Now, if you look over here, jean overalls, okay, and I believe that this is, let's see, great, Yaron Shmuel, okay? He's the one wearing the overalls, and clearly wearing overalls. Now, here's the thing about these documents. It's sad to me that we're not getting the actual photographs, scans of them. Are you telling me that in 2001 that the FBI wasn't taking high-quality scans from the film, by the way? You know, I was in college in 97. I went to school for graphics. You know, that's how I'm able to kind of pull off this production and throw together thumbnails and, you know, Photoshop, Premiere, do documentary films for you guys. It's because the technology was there. Why are we getting scans? All right? And some people have talked about the dates on that. I think it's a legitimate question. The other thing that's really obfuscated from these scans, and again, remember I was talking about file locations and how we have that blocked out for some reason, but you can't really get a good beat. I mean, obviously this person is, you know, we don't get to see their face, which is ridiculous since we already know who they are. Why, you know, we're not allowed to see their facial expressions? Weird. Wonder why. Now, if you look, you really can't see the skyline. And remember, some of these are dated 9/10. And I know we're going to get into one where it appears that through the reports, it's confirmed that this guy's holding a lighter. You wouldn't really be able to prove it was a lighter if you did not have the accompanying FBI report, okay? And Mint Press has actually done a really great job of not only, you know, putting this against that report, but taking you and showing you where they are relative to this. Now, if you'll notice, it appears that they are lower than, say, this picture is taken, and the skyline would probably appear a little bit higher, okay? So, mintpress.com, doing some pretty good work here. You can get the Scrib document there. Again, this one right here, and we're going to get to the actual document. This is the one where he's supposedly holding the lighter. Why are we getting photocopies and not high-quality scans? That, you know, that's something out of the gates, guys, I really believe that we have to start going to bat for and going to court for, because the documentation they provide to us many times is purposefully obfuscated. You look at, you know, some of this documentation going back to the MK Ultra stuff, and, you know, it's abhorrent. But obviously technology has changed. And the idea that they just, you know, they develop the photographs and they put them in the file that way and they don't have them somewhere digitally, it's not on a USB stick or a hard drive. Come on. I'm not saying it should be in the cloud, but obviously it should, you know, physically be somewhere else. Give me a break here. So, let's continue with the actual documents, and then in short order we're we're going to play some of my documentary Invisible Empire, the Israeli section. Okay? So going back, you see they're arm in arm. Again, that's the one we used for the thumbnail. A lot of these are repeaters. There we'd be able to see the skyline. And remember, when we find out, the reason they don't want you to see these pictures is, and there's the lighter one, by the way. Again, this entire skyline is gone. And there's no way it's absolutely gone in the thing. And this is the one right here where it seems to be 9:10, by the way, guys. See that? So let's say that was taken on 9:10. And the actual photograph does show the World Trade Center unharmed the day before. And, the person's smiling, and then there's pictures of them celebrating. And, again, the eyewitness accounts is they're called the dancing Israelis for a reason, because they were celebrating that day. And forget about, the woman who sat there and starts talking when she says that they didn't look shocked to me. Well, there's a reason they didn't look shocked. So again, here's another one that we should really have a great idea of the skyline. It looks like somebody's given the peace symbol here. Or, I can't really tell because, again, so obfuscated on the hands. But we would see the two faces for sure. And once again, two faces, people. This is the man in the overalls we discussed that's in the police report. Schumel, I guess his name is. And for some reason, the FBI has us focused in on what seems to just be a zoom in. It looks like it's the exact thing. Maybe some misdirection. I couldn't really tell you. And once again, here's someone's face and the entire background is gone. Someone's arm around another person, the entire background is gone. Not to mention we can't see their facial expressions. So is it a bit disappointing, this one as well? There'd be a face here. It looks like maybe even more of it's cut out. I can't quite make of it. And here we are again. I would assume that this part of the picture is completely cut out. Now remember, we had the explosives team come out, and again, this looks like a heavily redacted, almost nothing. It's absolutely disgusting that this whole thing is not declassified and available to the public. So again, Mint Press is doing a really good job with this story, at least as much as they can. Again, you could probably make your way around Google Earth and kind of get a look like them and find some photographs as well. But with the entire background whited out, how much can we really know? So, that being said, a lot of people have accused me of, you covered up Israel's role in 9/11 Burmis. You're a fraud. You're a charlatan. This film is from 2008. It was released on 9/11 in 2008, folks. It's almost 11 years now. As far as the Loose Change series was, if you notice, the Loose Change series was very heavy on the physical anomalies, whereas my movie Fabled Enemies was not. It was there to kind of show you the patterns, the intelligence agencies, the patsies, the whistleblowers, the roles of Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, bin Laden, the hijackers, Able Danger, the Israeli operatives, Pakistan, and so much more. So, this is 21 minutes, 47 seconds into the movie. Everything is available free over on my page. If you're not subscribed, by the way, guys, now's a great time to subscribe. Thumbs this video up so more people join the stream. Check out this information. Share it with others. So here we go, guys. This is Fabled Enemies. It was widely reported that men had been celebrating the attack after recording the first plane strike. They were not Al-Qaeda, but they were detained.
I grabbed my binoculars and I could see the towers from my window. And this is where I'm looking. And all of a sudden, down there, I see this van park. And I see 3 guys on top of the van. And I could see that they were like happy. They didn't look shocked to me. They didn't look shocked.
There was a group of Israelis, some of whom later were revealed as Mossad assets, who were arrested after cheering and high-fiving and videotaping the crash of the airplanes into the World Trade Towers.
Several other men were detained after a van full of explosives was stopped outside of Manhattan.
So, the question is, are these the same people? Are they the same people? Because is it the van? Is this a second group? Because she talks about the people celebrating. Are they called in? I make mistakes too. I want to make that absolutely 100% clear. Now, the other question is, and I would have loved to see this FOIA request, is there film of this thing? Reportedly there's some film of this thing. Again, I have to go through all of that FBI stuff and find out if it's more than pictures. But if there's video of this and what they were doing, I mean, the fact that that's never been made public is absolutely disturbing.
Earlier, we had heard that an FBI spokesperson said that there was a report on the George Washington Bridge, which is another facility which you folks are responsible for policing, a report that there had been a van stopped there that had explosives.
Asked this week about another sprawling investigation and the detention of 60 Israelis since September 11th, the Bush administration treated the questions like hot potatoes.
I would just refer you to the Department of Justice with it. I'm not familiar with the report.
I'm aware that some Israeli citizens have been detained. With respect to why they are being detained and the other aspects of your question, whether it's because they are in intelligence services or what they were doing, I will defer to the Department of Justice and the FBI to answer that.
So let's stop it there. There you had Ari Fleischer, who's still a big talking head on Fox News. He was the press secretary at the time, acknowledging that indeed, the reports that we're seeing right now that were declassified in 2015. And again, that's going to be a long deep dive, guys. I'm not going to lie. It's going to take me a while to go over it, pick out some parts, go through it with you. But one of the most important things there is, you look at this police report, and it's clear, right after they were processed, basically just put into cuffs, FBI or agents responded and took over the scene, period. So the cops didn't really get a long time with them. How much explosives, we're gonna talk about that kind of, because right now it's going to take a different angle. There's more than just the people that actually got arrested that day.
On March 6, 2002, a draft report from the DEA said it may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. Despite all of this, all the Israelis were let go without any espionage charges being filed. Fox News anchors Brit Hume and Carl Cameron would do a 4-part investigation into these allegations in December of 2001 and yield stunning results.
It has been more than 16 years since a civilian working for the Navy was charged with passing secrets to Israel. Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to conspiracy to commit espionage and is serving a life sentence. At first,
by the way, Pollard, I believe, got pardoned. He's out. So, back in the day, but most people don't even know who Jonathan Pollard is. Most people don't understand, again, Israel, who were supposed to be our ally, had somebody on the inside working on behalf of the government. Believe the hype. It wasn't a rogue agent. He got caught, and he was supposed to do a life sentence. And no, I don't believe he did do a life sentence. We'll look into that if I can remember, but I'm pretty sure you can look up that Jonathan Pollard was released. His sentence was commuted in a deal.
First, Israeli leaders claimed Pollard was part of a rogue operation, but later took responsibility for his work. Now, Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S.
Since September 11th, more than 60 Israelis have been arrested or detained, either under the new Patriot anti-terrorism law or for immigration violations. A handful of active Israeli military were among those detained, according to investigators, who say some of the detainees also failed polygraph questions when asked about alleged surveillance activities against and in the United States.
So again, a lot of detainees failing polygraphs on a widespread network that the DEA was looking into. Okay? Think about that, guys. And by the way, yes, Pollard was released in 2015.
Investigators suspect that the Israelis may have gathered intelligence about the attacks in advance and not shared it. A highly placed investigator said there are, quote, tie-ins. But when asked for details, he flatly refused to describe them, saying, quote, evidence linking these Israelis to 911 is classified. I cannot tell you about evidence that has been gathered. It's classified information.
Now, when the FBI investigated It quickly unraveled to be the largest foreign spy ring ever uncovered inside the United States, the largest. Even the Soviet Union had not been spying on the United States as much as Israel has been doing. So the FBI started to round up these spies. They started to arrest them very quietly, and they were about halfway through this process of rounding up this spy ring when 9/11 happened.
Okay, so you got to understand, and that's correct. A lot of these people were detained in this ring, this DEA investigation, right? And the FBI involved, where a lot of these people were arrested prior. Now, not just the Israelis that get arrested on 9/11, but many more were arrested afterwards. And all of them, apparently, unless there's classified reports out there that we don't know about, and there very well could be since we waited till 2015 to get heavily redacted reports anyway, and apparently 2019 to get pictures that are also heavily redacted. So let's just continue here.
Numerous classified documents obtained by Fox News indicate that even prior to September 11th, as many as 140 other Israelis had been detained or arrested in a secretive and sprawling investigation into suspected espionage by Israelis in the United States. Investigators from numerous government agencies are part of a working group that's been compiling evidence since the mid-90s. These documents detail hundreds.
Did you just see that? Did you say FBI, CIA, NSA, just about every agency you could think of is in on this investigation? And then now what he's about to reveal is these are the locations where the 140 or so and their partners were working out of. Middle America and the West. Now, there's some of the District of Columbia here. That's, close to New York. I'm surprised that New York was not part of it. But again, these are investigations prior to 9/11. If they hadn't been identified prior to 9/11, that could suggest why those Israelis that were arrested that day had not been detained earlier. Maybe they just didn't have that much intelligence.
Hundreds of incidents in cities and towns across the country that investigators say, quote, may well be an organized intelligence gathering activity. The first part of the investigation focuses on Israelis who say they are art students from the University of Jerusalem and Bezalel Academy. Documents say they, quote, targeted and penetrated military bases.
Look at this. Again, so this network that you just saw all over the country prior to 9/11 targeted and penetrated every single agency you're about to see here. That was military bases, DOD, DEA, FBI, Secret Service. The list will go on.
The DEA, FBI, and dozens of other government facilities, and even secret offices and unlisted private homes of law enforcement and intelligence personnel.
Secret offices and private unlisted homes. Well, how could they do that? Well, it seems like they had access to all these telecommunications prior to 9/11. Prior to the Internet Track Trace database system, let me tell you something. All telecommunications were already being tracked, traced, and databased through AT&T and other telecom servers by siphoning off all that information into secret server rooms. And then on top of that, the telecom companies they would use, Amdocs and Converse, were Israeli companies, 90+% of the time.
The majority of those questioned, quote, stated they served in military intelligence, electronic surveillance intercept, and or explosive ordnance units. Why would Israelis spy in and on the U.S.? A General Accounting Office investigation referred to Israel as Country A and said, quote, according to a U.S. intelligence agency, the government of Country A conducts the most aggressive espionage operation against the U.S. of any U.S. ally. The document concludes, quote, Israel possesses the resources and technical capability to achieve its collection objectives.
What about this question of advanced knowledge of what was going to happen on 9/11? How clear are investigators that some Israeli agents may have known something?
Well, it's very explosive information, obviously, and there's a great deal of evidence that they say they have collected, none of it necessarily conclusive. It's more when they put it all together. A bigger question, they say, is how could they not have known? Almost a direct quote, Britt.
It is now apparent that this intelligence ring was inside the U.S., had prior knowledge of 9/11, and had a classified role in 9/11, which officials refused to discuss. It was also able to penetrate U.S. intelligence agencies and secret offices. yet all were released. The men who were detained due to the report they were taping the first plane crash and then celebrating and joking about it actually went on television and admitted it was their job to record the attack.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event.
How could they have known about the attack? And who sent them to document it? The evidence points to a large intelligence network inside the United States that had teams on the ground, such as the ones recording the attack, and electronic surveillance teams gathering information. Another team who was involved that day detonated explosives on the ground.
We have both suspects under K. We have the suspect who drove the van exploded. Yeah, I just want to make sure you and your guys are all right over there, K, that's all. We have both Neotrans driven that exploded. What location? King Street between 6 and 7.
So let's stop there. A lot of people, again, I've been accused of covering this stuff up forever. And apparently, Jonathan Pollard, the Israeli spy, he was paroled, not pardoned. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the super chat, guys. Those help me out. So no one, Jag, thank you so much. But yeah, there's a separate incident of an explosion. Now, think about that. That's not the same one. They're talking about the van exploding. It's something that doesn't really get brought up. Now, we have a ton of secondary explosions that were recorded on television by eyewitness accounts, or you can hear them popping off in the background, many of which we have in Loose Change Final Cut. And one of the reasons, that's in Loose Change Final Cut, and it's not something I focus on Fabled Enemies, again, those are the physical anomalies, and these are the reported intelligence agencies, the whistleblowers, the timeline, the movement of money. How do they do surveillance? We just talked about that. So all of these Israelis that are rounded up prior to 9/11, about 140 of them, combined with these 5 Israelis that get arrested on 9/11, then more get rounded up. Many of them are failing lie detector tests. They've infiltrated all of these government bases, private installations, and homes by posing as art students, and none of this is ever discussed. But I've covered this up for years. 2008 film.
How would these teams obtain their information?
The investigation on our side basically tracked back to 2 companies. The first one was called Amdocs. This is an Israeli-owned company which does the billing for 90% of the telephone companies inside the United States.
Fox News has learned that some American terrorism investigators fear certain suspects in the September 11th attacks may have managed to stay ahead of them by knowing who and when investigators are calling on the telephone. How? By obtaining and analyzing data that's generated every time someone in the U.S. makes a phone call.
One sitting and say, please.
Here's how the system works. Most directory assistance calls and virtually all call records and billing in the U.S. are done for the phone companies by Amdocs Limited, an Israeli-based private telecommunications company. Amdocs has contracts with the 25 biggest phone companies in America and more worldwide. It is virtually impossible to make a call on normal phones without generating an Amdocs record of it. In recent years, the FBI and other government agencies have investigated Amdocs more than once. Sources tell Fox News that in 1999, the super-secret National Security Agency, headquartered in northern Maryland, issued what's called a top-secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information report, TSSCI, warning that records of calls in the United States were getting into foreign hands, in Israel in particular.
Now, let me stop that. What people don't understand about spycraft is you use the technology of the era or the access to that technology. So let's say that Israel isn't the NSA and they can't have that server room that we talked about. Hepting versus AT&T, folks, if you want to check that out, the NSA siphoning off all those communications, twice thrown out of court, okay? Well, what do you do then? Well, you go on the back end, you have a business created, you're a telecom company, and through the billing information of when calls took place, because again, this is pre-GPS. Not everybody had one of these little magic boxes in their hand that told everybody who was calling. You know, you had to have call ID at the time and things like that. Well, what we will have is the time the call was made, how long the call was, and where from. And then they would access that information and networks and say, hey, this guy's in the military, or this guy's in the FBI, or this guy's in the Secret Service. Why don't we send one of our art students over there, see if he can infiltrate the home, start talking to them. Maybe, see how important they are. Once they infiltrate that person, they see who they're talking to. And then they can visit those locations. Well, who lives here? Who lives there? That's how it was done. And again, they were very, very good at it, apparently. So let's continue.
Fox News has learned that the NSA has held numerous classified conferences to warn the FBI and CIA how Amdocs records could be used.
So if you know the name of a police officer, or even if you know the name just of an informant, you can follow that network of who's talking to who and basically determine that whole association of names and contacts that represent that unit of operation.
Fox News has documents of a 1997 drug trafficking case in Los Angeles in which telephone information, the types that Amdocs collects, was used to, quote, completely compromise the communications of the FBI, the Secret Service, the DEA, and the LAPD.
Completely compromised. Notice the LAPD is in there. You know why the LAPD is in there? They had a large presence on the West Coast. We showed that diagram. Large presence in California. They're compromising top-level law officials everywhere. Completely. And they were holding classified conferences at the NSA discussing this problem. This has never been out in the public. That's in 1999, prior to 9/11. It's 20 years ago. And what do we got now? We got a president that can't get enough Netanyahu. We got a president that's predicating a possible war with Iran based on lies. A guy that said he was getting us out of Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria, and what happens? No, none of the above. So let's continue with more fabled enemies here.
Amdocs would not be the only company with ties to the Israeli government. Israel was also gathering information from a separate business, Comverse Infosys, who was also listening in.
This company, inside the United States, installs and maintains the phone tapping equipment that law enforcement and the government use to eavesdrop on your phone calls.
The company is Comverse Infosys, a subsidiary of an Israeli-run private telecommunications firm with offices throughout the U.S. It provides wiretapping equipment for law enforcement. Here's how wiretapping works in the U.S. Every time you make a call, it passes through the nation's elaborate network of switchers and routers run by the phone companies. Custom computers and software made by companies like Comverse are tied into that network to intercept, record, and store the wiretapped calls, and at the same time transmit them to investigators.
We know we just had this FISA bill go through that granted immunity to the telecom companies. It was Comverse Infosystem that was setting up all these special rooms and all the switching centers where the law enforcement or the government or whoever could simply push a button and listen to your phone call. Gone are the days of the little alligator clips and wires needed to eavesdrop on a phone call. They can sit in a room anywhere in America, touch a few buttons, and listen to your phone call.
But it's more like mouse clicks now, if that. I bet you there's some touch screens there, and it's archived. Guys, you can't imagine how bad this surveillance state really is, and big data really is. I promise you. ACR, right now, I'm not making a phone call. I guarantee you these things are hooked up to the internet. ACR, Automated Content Recognition. It's the acronym no one wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. It's the complete use of every device to surveil you through your applications, mostly social media, by the way. Just putting it out there.
Complaint about this system is that the wiretap computer programs made by Comverse have in effect a back door through which wiretaps themselves can be intercepted by unauthorized parties. Adding to the suspicions is the fact that in Israel, Converse works closely with the Israeli government and under special programs gets reimbursed for up to 50% of its research and development costs by the Israeli Ministry of Industry and Trade. But investigators within the DEA, INS, and FBI have all told Fox News that to pursue or even suggest Israeli spying through Converse is considered career suicide. And sources say that while various FBI inquiries into Converse have been conducted over the years, they've been halted before the actual equipment has ever been thoroughly tested for leaks.
More to the point, agents within the U.S. government have been told point blank that to even suggest Israeli spying or an Israel link to 9/11 is career suicide. It's been described as the third rail of American politics. If you touch it, you die. You never get to come back again. It's all over. It's the black pit where you can never go.
But there is a bitter turf war internally at FBI. It is the FBI's office in Quantico, Virginia, that has jurisdiction over awarding contracts and buying intercept equipment. And for years, they've thrown much of the business to Converse. A handful of former U.S. law enforcement officials involved in awarding Converse government contracts over the years now work for the company. Numerous sources say some of those individuals were asked to leave government service under what knowledgeable sources call troublesome circumstances that remain under administrative review within the Justice Department.
But never in the public eye. Never in the public eye. Think about this. You know, people wonder why so many people don't like Israel. Well, it's because of things like this. It's because they've actually conducted large-scale espionage against intelligence agencies, assets, and people in the United States, period. And if you don't think that extends to the corporate world or Congress or the Senate or the government, it absolutely does, often in open fashions through things like AIPAC, okay? And dual citizenship. These are real issues. And the flip side to that coin is they are one of our military allies, if not our largest military ally in the Middle East. We help prop them up as a nation state, period. You know, we could talk about Saudi Arabia. We can talk about Pakistan as well, I guess, on a smaller level. But when you look at Israel and their arsenal and their military capabilities and location, I mean, it's a huge strategic location. That does not in any way excuse this type of behavior or these actions. But what I'm trying to do is really explain how this works geopolitically. So let's continue with the end of the Israeli operative section of Fabled Enemies.
And what troubles investigators most, particularly in New York in the counterterrorism investigation of the World Trade Center attack, is that on a number of cases, suspects that they had sought to wiretap and surveil immediately changed their telecommunications processes. They started acting much differently as soon as those supposedly secret wiretaps went into place.
Somehow, suspected terrorists who were being surveilled by these very Israelis were able to change their behavior to elude the FBI. Israel's former Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, would boldly state that we are benefiting from one thing, and that is the attack on the Twin Towers and Pentagon.
The United States has wholeheartedly supported essentially state-sponsored terrorism, both domestically in Israel and as part of Israel's foreign policy. The American relationship with Israel is the root cause of most of the problems the United States is facing around the world today.
Well, I would say this, that there's one big elephant in the living room. It's never asked about. People don't like to put it on any video or anything like that. But it is the relationship between the United States of America and the State of Israel. It's the fly in the ointment. It's gotten us into a peck of trouble in the Middle East.
And there you go. That is Ray McGovern, by the way. Ray is a great anti-war activist and really a guy I was lucky to get to do that. He was a CIA analyst, and he used to brief George H.W. Bush. He would give him the daily briefings. So, guys, if you've never seen that, please go check out the rest of the movie. It's free on my page. That's Fabled Enemies. But we're about to talk about another documentary right now. We're going to move pretty quick here. So this is probably something a lot of you guys are unaware of. But there's a documentary out there called We Live in Public, 2009. This was out during my time over at InfoWars. Now, this guy named Josh Harris, okay, and by the way, You can see the whole documentary. You can look it up. It's on archive.org. We're going to focus on this scene in a little bit. But what this was really about, by the way, you want to talk about things. It's actually getting made into a major motion picture. I was unaware of this, but Ben Stiller is making it into a picture. It is an incredible story. So, who's Josh Harris? How could he possibly be connected to this? I'll just put this headline behind me so you can start getting an idea. Okay, and by the way, he's not dead. I believe this demise is just talking about where he's living because he's living in Vegas. This is a 2016 article. So Josh Harris is a guy who is before his time, okay? He wants streaming internet television in the 90s, but bandwidth couldn't handle it. There wasn't a user base there. But picture an idea like YouTube well before YouTube, any type of streaming service. This guy was one of the pioneers. And in the late 90s especially, a lot of people were just throwing money at tech companies, hoping that they were going to be the next big thing. And it was the internet bubble. So Josh Harris gets a lot of this money, and he's kind of eccentric on top of it. But he also believes that everything is going to be recorded. So he starts recording everything. And then he decides he's going to take a bunch of people and move them into an underground base in the United States. This is all, again, you need to watch this yourself, in New York City. I believe it's in Lower Manhattan. And this is important, guys, by the way. All right? So he has all these people. It gets rated on New Year's, but he has like CIA interrogations. So former CIA officers down there, on top of there being a bunch of guns, total surveillance, weird experiments going on. I want to make sure that you can't hear this because I don't want it to be taken down. So they're talking about how this was torture. They're talking about how this was former CIA, right? Now, we're going to get to somebody here in a moment that was part of the 9/11 truth movement, this guy right here. And we're going to stop it here because he's told that, let's see if we're going to go there. Basically, we didn't want to exactly show all of that. We're going to X that out. But yeah, we didn't get to see most of it. Hopefully, there he is. Yikes. Let's hope that doesn't get pulled. But as you can see, that guy right there is a guy named Nico Haupt. Now, Nico Haupt is one of the first purveyors of the no plane theory. The 9/11 disinfo that no planes hit any towers, ghost planes. I met Nico back in 2005, I believe. This was pre-We Are Change. This is actually about the same time I meet Luke Rudkowski. I meet them both at a New York 9/11 truth meeting in the city. And Nico was actually, before doing this ghost plane and CGI and green screen stuff that, in my opinion, took off with the lunatics and the disinfo people to discredit research that you just saw. No ghost planes here, baby. Instead, we showed you documents. We showed you whistleblowers. We showed you eyewitnesses. Okay? But Nico's part of these weird experiments down there. Did you just see him strip down? Of CIA interrogations. Now, I don't know what's up with the guy, but he acted very bizarrely, and mind control is a very real thing. And for this stuff to be taking place in Josh Harris's little experiment, which was an experiment, period. That's what it was. Nico even talked about it with me really quickly. He talked about Josh Harris with me prior to me ever seeing We Live in Public Now, years beforehand. And he eventually slipped into madness, complete madness. Now, Harris has another really weird thing about him. He tapes these Israeli art students. Remember, we talked about art students. We're going to turn this all the way down. He tapes these Israeli art students at the World Trade Center prior to 9/11. This is the video. The art students are a group called Gelatin, by the way. And he tapes them removing it's unbelievable. They remove a window from the World Trade Center as part of a art project and walk out. I don't know if this is a test of security. They're pointing down on it. It's all very bizarre, right? So when you get into it and you start looking down here, for instance, right here, see where that little is? That's the removal of the window. You can see how they planned it out. And here you can see them actually doing it. And by the way, a lot of people have said the boxes that are in the background are labeled to appear that they are explosives. And then they get into, Josh and his fall and his documentary. But he then starts talking about how he believes he's being watched by the FBI over the art installation and its ties with 9/11, the Gelatin Group. Again, you can't make this stuff up. And let's go back a little bit. So again, here they are recording it. This is pre-9/11. He's somehow involved in this. And somehow one of the people that's involved in early 9/11 truth and popularizes with Judy Wood. Listen, you think that was wacky of him taking his clothes off in a weird interrogation environment? Watch that whole documentary. It's incredible stuff. It's stuff that needs to be watched. So with all that being said, guys, I'm going to do another dive. I'm going to do a dive into these documents in the very, very near future. It's going to be a tough one since there's over 140 pages in just the first document alone. I perused some of the other ones. They don't seem to be quite as deep, but we're going to get deep into this. We're going to see as much as we can get. Again, I'm a little bit disappointed with the pictures. I'm glad they're out there because, they lay a groundwork. They let people know that this is a real issue, but look how redacted they are. And once again, why we're not getting actual scans after, 2001 is absolutely ridiculous. You think this is the stuff that the FBI is looking at when they're investigating things, when they pull up a file? Absolutely not. It's absolutely ridiculous. So once again, guys, I really appreciate the super chats. Guys, they help me stay alive here. Please share this on social media. We have a record number of live streamers on this channel. This is my main channel, but I do work daily for We Are Change and News for a Change. Make sure you're subscribed to them as well. Subscribe to this. Thumbs up the video. Share this stuff out there. Guys, once we hit 20,000 subscribers, I'm just under 18 now. We'll do another AMA session. And really, it's the road to 30K. Once we get to 30,000, we could do even more with this channel, a lot more with this channel, and hopefully have so much more on a daily basis. There are days I just have to take off. Not only am I working for We Are Change, but I take care of my sister's kids. There's Little League to be had. Well, it's softball, but you get it. There's Boys and Girls Club. There's dog walks. There's dinner time. There's life in general. I'm very much like you guys. So thank you so much for joining me on this ride. I really appreciate it. Make sure you share this with everybody else. And get out there and be the change you want to see in the world.